So, it has been a massive week for camera announcements. I don't think I've ever seen so many new models drop in a single week. In one day, we had new cameras from Canon, Nikon, and Red, and the following day, we had the first cinema camera from Fuji. I guess their long-awaited entry into the cinema-specific camera market with their medium format camera, the Eterna 55. I haven't been able to get my hands on any of these cameras yet, but I will in coming weeks. In particular, I've already arranged to get the Canon C50 to do some testing with. But in the meantime, I just wanted to offer my 2 cents worth on my thoughts on the new releases that came this week. First off the bat, the Canon C50, a camera that already a lot of people are asking, will it be the FX3 killer? Or finally Canon's answer to the FX3, which has been a super popular camera in recent years, mainly due to the sensor that Sony developed, which is also shared by cameras like the FX6 and the A7S III. I'm personally familiar with that sensor and think it's great. Nice dynamic range, the dual ISO feature, just the low resolution that doesn't result in them having to do pixel binning and downsampling and stuff like that. It's been really good. And that was the sensor that for Sony, I think managed to convince people that Sonys don't actually have bad color science. I think in the era of cameras like the FS7, great results were possible with Sony. It wasn't that they were bad cameras or had bad color science as such, but it was harder work and it was easier to stuff up. There's heaps of people who've just ended up with kind of footage that looks a bit blue or unnatural skin tones and things like that in that era. Since then, a lot's changed. Post tools have gotten better, and also I think Sony have proven to people that with their new sensors, that's not a thing anymore. So I think all the other camera manufacturers have been wanting to, I guess, come out with competition to give Sony a run for their money. Enter the room, the Canon C50. Now the headline here is that it has open gate recording in 7K. That in particular, I think, is a feature I'm really keen to test out. There's two reasons why I think open gate's cool. Firstly, I do love that form factor as an output, but also it's actually very practical. I have a few clients where I'm now delivering in both wide and vertical, and open gate is actually a great capture format for that. It's much closer to the two. 16:9 is just so different to 9:16. Sometimes they just both come at such an expense to each other, having to frame for both. So being able to capture that is great. It's also got really good 4K options. It shoots up to 120 frames a second in Canon RAW. I own a C80 and I've been really happy with Canon RAW. I've been shooting a bunch of stuff in 6K and works really well. I don't make proxies and I edit it directly in Resolve and don't have any problems. I might have to turn my playback resolution down, but my system isn't even that spec'd out and it doesn't have a problem with Canon RAW. So I think that's become a really good codec. What does this camera need to do to be successful? Two things. It needs to improve on the battery life of previous compact Canon cameras. The SLRs, in particular ones like the first R5, really didn't have a great name for battery life during video recording. Not even just that, they basically weren't usable off the inbuilt batteries. You had to figure out some other way of powering them. Meanwhile, brands like Sony, Nikon, they're in their SLRs that had good video capabilities, it wasn't a problem. So that's an area Canon have really needed to address. And it'll be interesting to see if they have in this. Definitely on paper, it's way better than previous Canon SLRs in terms of battery life. The other one is overheating. That's also been a bit of a problem Canon have had. And also, it does seem that this camera has addressed that. So they're both things that will come really welcomed. But yeah, look, it just looks like a great form factor, a nice compact camera, pretty well priced. There's a lot of RF lenses now. You know, I think this will appeal to a lot of people, especially the open gate thing. That's not on a lot of SLRs. Panasonic have it, there's some Blackmagic options, but you know, this is a popular form factor of cameras these days, the body design of the C50. So open gate has been a great move. I'm really keen to test that out. And it actually comes at kind of perfect timing for me. I've been so happy with my C80. I think I do now want a smaller camera as a B cam to that, but also I do like to have one stills camera in my kit. And so the fact that the C50 can take good quality stills as well, you know, full frame sensor and a good resolution, it will take good stills. That's definitely a benefit for me. So I'm really excited to test that camera out, and expect my review on that one during October. The next camera that got released is the Nikon ZR, Nikon's first collaboration with Red. This one's pretty exciting. You know, when Nikon bought Red a while ago, everyone wondered what happened, and I think everyone kind of knew that they're not going to cannibalize Red's main business, which is high-end cinema cameras, but that it will be a merging and a sharing of the technologies, I guess you'd say, which is exactly what happened. But I don't think anyone expected them to come out with such a aggressively priced, high-featured camera. This thing's tiny, and it does 6K 60, 4K up to 120, and maybe the biggest selection of codecs on the market. They've got a new variant of Red RAW. Now, look, as a long-time Red shooter, Red RAW slash R3D is one of my favorite codecs. It's great to work with. The file sizes are good. Yeah, it's been great. And I mean, look, I'm talking about 16-bit Red RAW and the different variants I've used on cameras like the Dragon, Komodo, Raptor, etc. So it is a little bit different. This one they're calling R3D NE, so Nikon Edition, I'm pretty sure that means. But look, 12-bit Red RAW, I'm sure it's going to be great. Last year, I tested out the Z6 Mark III and tested out Nikon's RAW, and I thought that was a really good codec as well. So take your pick really, but I think Red RAW is going to be the one a lot of people want to use. Red colors have always been well known. That codec has been around for such a long time now that I think it's very accepted and works with all your programs. Yeah, I think Red RAW is great. One of, if the not best codec for the quality versus file size trade-off. But it's got others in there as well. It's got things like ProRes. You could run H.265 if you're doing more quick turnaround stuff or things where you wanted smaller files. Yeah, my friend Spencer Frost here in Sydney shot the launch film for this. He put it in a water housing. They did follow cam stuff with it. A bunch of things that just demonstrated what you can do with such a compact camera. So look, that one's really exciting, and I think it's going to appeal to a lot of people, especially seeing that Z mount is now getting a reputation as being so adaptable, for example, to Sony lenses, but a bunch of others as well. So you don't necessarily have to dive into the Nikon lens ecosystem. You could bring your own and probably adapt to what you're currently using, not Canon RF, but any of the others. So yeah, that's a really exciting camera, and I'm really keen to test that out. And you know, whether even people who don't want to dive into the Nikon ecosystem, you might just buy that as a travel camera or as a camera to go in an underwater housing, or you know, the way it's priced, it's cheap for professionals, but also people getting started. It's a great choice for being able to buy a camera that you're going to be able to get really good results with. I was watching Mark Bone's video yesterday, and some of the shots look so nice. So we're in such a great time, and yeah, I think that's a really exciting camera. And yeah, hopefully keen to test that out myself at some point. The other camera that dropped on the same day, and one that I'm probably less excited about, but I'll have a quick talk about, was the red Raptor XE. And basically it's just a cheaper, lower spec version of the red Raptor. So roughly speaking, it looks like it's half the frame rates in most of the resolutions, which, given how well spec'd the Raptor was, the specs are still pretty good. You know, things like 8K 60, 4K 120, they're basically just half the frame rates that were on the full spec V Raptor. But coming in at a new price point, it will appeal to certain people who, I guess, wanted to be able to get a Raptor but maybe couldn't afford it. One thing about that space is, personally, I just think the use cases for owning a Raptor are getting less and less, especially with these new super competitively priced, much cheaper cameras like the ones I've mentioned earlier. So, and you know, with how good post tools have gotten, like how powerful Resolve is these days. So I think the market for Raptors is a pretty specific one. I've recently done a video on the Raptor. I've rented that for a few commercials lately, and I think for me that kind of arrangement works well. Rent it when I need it, but for everything else, cameras like my C80, my Komodo, they work really well just for the week-to-week bill-paying kinds of jobs, which you don't need something like a Raptor for. The Raptor's good if you're getting enough high-end jobs that you can charge it back to your client and end up paying it off and making a profit that way. Just to buy for it to get you work, I don't think is a good idea. It's at the price point where you need to be charging for it. So cool that, I guess, Red have come out with something a bit more affordable, but definitely a camera that was less exciting than the other two for me. So the last camera I'm going to talk about in this video, and this was one that the announcement came the following day, is the Fuji Eterna 55. So this is Fuji's medium format cinema camera, their first camera of that type. Previously, they'd just made stills cameras with video capabilities. And look, I've got friends who are still photographers who have switched to Fuji, the GFX models in recent years, and they love them. And if I was a photographer, I probably would too. I actually still want to get a Fuji medium format camera just for my own purposes, except you goddamn YouTubers have made them go way up in value. Cameras like the 50R. That's another story. But yeah, anyway, I was excited for this camera to come out because the idea of such a big sensor and Fuji's color science seems like it's something that would enable you to get really cool results, really nice results. But the price that it's landed at and the specs that it has, I think I'm a little bit underwhelmed. I mean, in particular, the fact that if you want to record open gate, which is what I would want to record at if I was using this camera, and you know, this is internally, it's 4K 48. And look, for a brand that is trying to make its mark in the industry, I just don't think that's aggressive enough. I think they should have come out swinging with this model if they wanted to really make a mark. And so at its price point of just under 17,000 US, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how this is going to go. There's going to be a bunch of people that want to use it for sure. And maybe it can become a cheaper alternative to something like an Arri or a Sony Venice. Maybe it can have that kind of prestige because of the look that you can get out of this camera. I mean, you would definitely hope that it is a level above cameras like the C400 and things like that. But yeah, I don't know. 4K ProRes, you would just hope that that sensor is so nice that you don't need a raw codec or you don't need a high res file to get good looking results, which is highly possible. But it's a camera that's ended up in a bit of its own category, and yeah, I'm not too sure who's going to use it, but to me, it should have been cheaper and it should have been higher spec'd, especially considering, I mean, you could just use the Fuji, whatever the newest version of the GFX 100 is, which has the same sensor and is going to have somewhat similar specs, but just in a stills body. You're paying a pretty big premium to get that Fuji cinema body. So it's an interesting one. Look, I'd love to use it, but definitely the price it's landed at isn't something I'd be looking at buying myself. Anyway, cool that it's entered the market, and I'm all for that bigger sensor technology because I just think it looks so cool with older glass and really immersive. Like, I love the look of those big sensors, but we'll see how that one goes. Anyway, I just wanted to do this fill-in video before I get the chance to hopefully review some of those cameras down the line. Hit me with your comments below. Which of those are you most excited on? Do you think they've hit the mark with them, or do you think they've dropped the ball in certain aspects? I know I'm already hearing people say things like they think Canon have dropped the ball by not including a viewfinder, but generally speaking, I think pretty exciting times, and I think these are all cameras that are going to sell pretty well. Cheers for watching, guys. See you on the next one.